You're listening to Keeping Up with the Knights, a podcast for the faculty and staff at Steele High School, allowing them to connect outside of the classroom. Teacher, coach, mentor, and speaker Michael Herrera, a past District Teacher of the Year, will sit down with fellow teachers and bring their stories to life. Sit back, relax, and enjoy these stories as they unfold on this episode of Keeping Up with the Knights.
Today I had the pleasure of sitting down with Jana Mahoney, a CTE teacher who teaches family consumer sciences for the past 6 years here at Steele High School. Ms. Mahoney does an incredible job with her students inside and outside the classroom. It was a great time talking with her, and I hope you enjoy it too. Please help me welcome Jana Mahoney to episode 7 of Keeping Up with the Knights. All right, I'm sitting down with Jana Mahoney. She is a Steele High School PALS teacher, and it's such a pleasure to have you today on Keeping Up with the Knights. It's always one of those things where I know that you build relationships with students, but the coolest thing is that you teach other students how to build relationships with their mentees, and I think that's awesome. So Jana Mahoney, thank you for joining me on this episode of Keeping Up with the Knights.
No problem.
All right, so the beginning of the podcast, I always like to start by asking the people that I do an interview with 5 random, shallow-ended questions. So you ready for this?
Sure, why not?
All right, so here's our bell ringer for the day, all right? Question number 1. What is something that no one really knows about you that you would like them to know?
You said easy.
It is easy.
It's not easy. My questions are way easier. I like to read. Kind of boring.
How about this then? What kind of books do you like to read?
Oh, happy books. Like it has to end happy. Like think Hallmark.
Okay.
If there's any like conflict, done.
Well, there you go. So you like
I live in a Disney world.
All right. Very good. See, that's something that I wouldn't know about you. All right. Question number 2. If you were not a teacher, what other profession would you pursue?
Oh, hands down, flight attendant. Heck yeah.
All right, you got it down already, like the scarf and everything, huh?
Oh, heck yeah. My
Okay.
little suitcase. Oh, yeah. Let's go.
Awesome. All right, question number 3. Okay, so COVID happened in March, right? And like some people took it upon themselves to either pick up a new hobby or revisit a hobby they've always had. So maybe what's something that you learned about yourself during COVID?
That I really like to read. I read a bunch of books.
You read a bunch of books.
Mm-hmm. And I watched Virgin Rivers on Netflix, and it made me mad because it's only one season. So I'm now almost done with the whole book series, so I know what happens because it bothered me.
Very good. All right, so you're a book nerd. I love it. So am I. All right, next question. What is okay? So you can't answer with reading. Okay, so like, what's your go-to hobby?
I'm really boring.
I don't believe that.
I like to feed my deer in the afternoons.
Now, do you hand feed them?
Oh, yeah.
That's right. I think I've seen pictures of you on Facebook before. They just come up and hang out with you in your driveway.
They're my friends.
Do you have names for them?
Susie and Buddy.
Susie and Buddy. All right.
And it doesn't, because there's a bunch of them, and I don't want to hurt their feelings if I call them the wrong name, so they're all Susie or all Buddy.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that. I can't wait to see more pictures with you and Susie and Buddy. Matter of fact, next time you take a picture with one of them, just put like a little caption, which one's Susie and which one's Buddy. Okay?
Well, Buddies have antlers.
Okay. All right. That's fair enough. All right. Last question for you. All right. So this actually might be a little bit more difficult, but I really want you to think about this. If you could go back in time and whisper something back to yourself, what would you tell yourself?
You got this?
Childhood.
It's going to turn out okay. You got this.
All right. You got this. I think actually today I posted something on Facebook and I ended it by saying, you got this. So I like that. All right. So there's your 5 questions. It's your turn.
Okay. Mine are way easier.
Okay.
Would you rather go to snowy, like on vacation, snowy or the sun? Beach.
I'm such a beach person. Like I love the beach. It's hard for me to turn that down, but I'm such a nature person. So snowy mountains in Cloudcroft, New Mexico sounds appealing. That's a tough one. But if I had to pick one, it's going to be the beach.
Okay.
Got to go.
Next question. Does toilet paper roll go over or
Yes.
does it go under?
No. Who goes under? No, that's wrong.
Under, so like those people,
No.
got to go over.
Yes, absolutely. That's a good question. Yeah, over.
And then if you had to be a hamburger or a hot dog, what would you be?
Hamburger.
Why?
Because they're amazing,
You
especially
get
with
smushed by the bun. And the hot dog, you at least get to lay on a soft, like, comfy thing.
yeah, but one could argue that the hamburger is smushed between two comfy things.
No, but you don't get to see the sun.
That is true. All right. Well, I'm sticking with hamburger.
No. Favorite ice cream?
You know what? Normally it'd be cookies and cream, but I fell in love with this ice cream from H-E-B called Starry Night. It is absolutely amazing. I love chocolate ice cream and I love like brownies and Oreos, and it kind of has that mixed into it. So it's like in every bite, you get a little bit of ice cream, a little bit of that brownie cake kind of stuff. So Starry Night from H-E-B.
And apparently I like food. In-N-Out or Whataburger?
Oh, that's such an easy question. It's Whataburger.
No!
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
Whataburger I like, but In-N-Out's 100% gluten-free, so I know I can eat there and not die. So
Okay. All right. I mean,
I'll take your Whataburger because if I could eat there and not get sick, yeah.
very good. All
That's
right.
my 5 questions.
Well, there you have it. So that's our beginning of the podcast called Bell Ringer. So I appreciate that. But all right, so let's get this started. The first thing I always like to do is just start by talking about like your childhood, right? So like talk a little bit about where you grew up and what your childhood was like up until about like the end of high school.
Okay, so I grew up in Houston, and then my parents divorced, so then we moved to Corpus, where I started living with my aunt and uncle and my grandparents, and I saw my mom every weekend. And then sophomore year, so we moved there about 5th grade. Yeah, because I went to the elementary school smelled really bad.
Corpus?
And no, that in Houston.
Okay.
And then in Corpus, I moved there in 5th grade, and I stayed there till my sophomore year in high school. And so I was a beach bum. My sister was older, and she used to skip school and take me with her, and we would go hang out on the beach. Not the best choice, but she was my ride home. And then my sophomore year, me and my aunt and uncle moved to Kerrville. So I went from a big school to a little podunk town where they didn't even have like a Sonic or Chick-fil-A, or they only had a Dairy Queen. So that was eye-opening. And cheered in high school, was a part of the Corpus Christi Ballet when I was there.
I would have never thought cheer. I would have actually thought dance. As much as the way you dance, I thought for sure it was dance. I didn't know you were a cheerleader.
Yep, I was a cheerleader because I rebelled because my sister was a phenomenal ballet dancer. I rebelled and secretly signed up to try out for cheer because I thought I was sticking it to my parents. That was my rebellion. And I became a cheerleader.
Very good. So were you
I actually cheered in the Macy's parade my sophomore year.
Well, see, you could have answered that when I asked you what's one thing
no one would know about you. Switch my answer.
That's awesome. All right. Well, that's really cool. So you mentioned a sister. So like who else do you have in your family? Other sisters? What do you have?
I have my full sister, and then I have a half sister.
Okay. All right.
But I'm really close to my full sister.
Okay. I gotcha. Very interesting. All right. So then you were in high school. Then at some point you made a decision to go off to college, right? So let's talk a little bit about your college years, where you went, how that process was, like academically for high school, getting ready for college. Where'd you go? And then maybe share a little bit of like maybe a pivotal moment for you in college.
Okay. So I went to Angelo State, go Rams, because one of my high school teachers went there, and senior English, you had to apply for a college, because that was back when everybody was going to a 4-year college. And so she told me, you're going to go to Angelo State because that's where I went. And this is going to sound wrong. You didn't have to take the SAT or ACT. And so that knocked off something else I didn't have to do. So I went to Angelo State for 2 years, and then I realized it was too far from my grandparents and my aunt. And so I transferred to Texas State, which when I transferred, it was Southwest Texas. And then my roommate from Angelo State moved with me to, there's Aunt, moved with me from Angelo State to Texas State. And she was going to be a teacher. I knew I wanted to be a teacher, but I didn't want to be like a special ed teacher because there's a lot of like legal paperwork and stuff. And that kind of scared me. She found family consumer science. And I was like, well, hey, that encompasses everything. Family, I'm going to have a family someday. I'm going to live in a house. So interior design, nutrition, I like to eat, fashion, I need clothes. So I was like, wow, that's stuff that actually relates. I'll just do that until I figure out what I want to do with my life. And so I fell in love with FCS.
So, and obviously once you fell in love with that, does that automatically put you in position to become a teacher though?
No. It is an option. So with family consumer science, I can work in the fashion industry. I can work in childcare. I can work in the nutrition. So it kind of encompasses all of that. And so, yeah.
So then at what point then, when you were at Texas State or Southwest Texas, did you realize that the path that you wanted to take was education?
Oh, I always knew I wanted to be a teacher.
Okay.
And so I was like, well, hopefully someday I become a wife and this degree will help me. And this is everything people need every day, whether they're going to be a doctor, a vet, mechanic, whatever. They're going to have a home. They're going to need to eat, and they're going to need to fully dress properly and have clothes that they can repair. And yeah.
So since you always knew that you wanted to be a teacher, then you graduated, right? You graduated college. And so talk to me a little bit about after you graduated college, did that automatically put you in position to get your first teaching job?
Yes. So I did my internship, my block is what they called it, at Canyon. And met one of the teachers at Smithson Valley, Tina, and I said, hey, can I please be your student teacher? Because back then we had to find our location that we were going to do student teaching.
Okay.
And so I pretty much begged her and said, please let me be your student teacher. I promise I won't be a headache. And so I was at Smithson Valley High School, and then the middle school teacher wanted to retire, but she didn't want to retire till she found a replacement. And so once I was graduating, they said, hey, do you want this job at the middle school? Which awesome. Never happens. Normally you start off in a small town. So.
Right. So see, that's why I love doing this podcast, because you learn stuff about people, right? So you started your academic or professional career, I should say, at Smithson Valley Middle School.
Spring Branch Middle School.
Spring Branch Middle School. I'm sorry. And so what year was that?
That was in 2007.
Okay. All right. And then from there, where did you go?
I stayed there 2 years. And then that was when they were cutting teachers, because I was at teacher cut or something. So they were moving teachers around and they were opening up a middle school at Churchill Middle School in New Braunfels. And I was like, well, that's close to home. If you need to move a teacher, move me. I don't have any kids. This is easy. I was the dance director there at Spring Branch for the year, and they needed one in Churchill Middle, so I went ahead and took that. Stayed there for about 3 or 4 years. Decided I want to be a stay-at-home mom. So I did that for half a year, and I jokingly told my husband I'm not going to go back to school unless a high school calls me, and it's like a PALS program where they work with kids. Not going to do it. 24 hours from that conversation, Shirt Civilo called and said, hey, we have a long-term sub going into a full-time position for a PALS teacher. Do you want it?
Isn't it amazing how that works out?
24 hours.
And so you've been here since?
Haven't left.
All right. That's awesome. I love to hear that. All right. So let's change gears just a little bit and kind of get into a little bit more thought-provoking kind of question. but it's a simple question. Why do you teach?
Because I love it. Such a Sunday school answer. No, I really love it because what I get to teach truly helps people. In the practicum or the PALS class, you truly get to see kids who people have invested in their lives, and they get to invest in their life. The mentorships that go on just make my heart so happy. Like, there's several times I've walked through the elementary schools just crying, because watching these high school kids invest in these little kids and truly be their buddy and be there for them when these kids may not have anyone, or they may have a whole army supporting them. It's just that spot. I can say during COVID, one of my projects I gave was for them to take a picture of themselves doing remote learning, or send them a message, a video like, hey guys, I'm in this, we're in this together, since it was so new. And I had several moms reach out and say that was huge for my kid. Their buddy was doing the same thing they were having that same struggle. So that was huge. I love the teaching intern class that we have. RST is what we call it. Just getting to teach new teachers and seeing the youth that want to be teachers and fall in love with it. And I just truly love teaching FCS. It's all life skills that they're going to need, whatever their future looks for. I mean, we all have to eat. We all have to manage money, like everything. It's just truly, it doesn't matter. It's all encompassed. So I love FCS.
Yeah. So like what I'm hearing you saying is that your fulfillment in education comes from seeing other kids, mentoring other kids. And that's where you get that response back that you want as a teacher. And that's why I started the episode by saying that I think it's awesome that you're in a position where, obviously through your teaching style and through you building relationships with kids, you're actually modeling the same behavior that you expect for them to have with their mentees that they're at these elementary schools. And I think that's so powerful. And I think you're in such a critical area in education where, and not just you, but like a lot of CTE teachers, we get to model the behavior in the profession that most of us had prior to education. So they're able to kind of, pull from each one of us and see what life's going to be like after high school. So I really like that. And it's really encouraging to know that kids are out there modeling your behavior. So for the teacher that might be on campus, and see, part of the reason for this podcast is we walk down the halls of Steele High School and we know each other's faces, but we don't know names, let alone maybe what they teach. Maybe we know what they teach, but we really don't know what they teach, right? So maybe share a little bit about what PALS is, what RST is, so people can not only identify you by your face, but by your name, and maybe now with what you teach and what you're doing for kids.
So the PALS program, I would say it's just like community service oriented. It's a class where they learn whether they're going to be a beautician or have clients or just be a manager of different people, learning how to deal with different personalities, getting to know that person and showing them their worth, but also being their encourager, or the person that says, hey, that's not the best choice. Because they could be in a spot where they manage, even if they're like team lead, a manager while they're in college, whether they're CEO, whatever it may look like, they're going to have to do managing. So we learn how to manage our clients, our buddies, paperwork, which we all know isn't part of every job. So we learn how to manage paperwork. Ready, Set, Teach. It's truly like, for most colleges, the block where you go in and you observe and you work with kids. That's pretty much what it is. Sometimes on the RST, when their mentor teacher has a sub, the RST student takes over for the full hour. So that's pretty cool to watch. Money matters. We talk about everything from savings to checkbooks to interest rates, credit cards, incorporate a little bit of Dave Ramsey in there. So that's
Amen. Thank you very much. No, I love that. I know it's one of those things I would love to actually teach that. But maybe in my next career. All right. So what do you think is your definition of success in the classroom? How do you know when your kids are successful?
When my kids feel important, loved, and supported.
But wait a minute, you didn't say anything about a score on a test.
Oh, I don't care about tests.
That's kind of weird.
I don't care about tests.
You know, I love your answer because that's raw and it's authentic. And honestly, it's the reality of teaching. And I think a lot of people, well, I can't say a lot of people. I think some people get it wrong. But yet your answer came in about 0.2 seconds, right? And I really do value what you just said there because that's so important to make kids feel loved. I mean, it's one of those things where you look at education and it's like, if you don't love kids,
get out.
Like, why are you, wait a minute, are you here because you love history? Are you here because you love English so much?
I love the paycheck. Come on.
Yeah, I know, right? So like, you know, it is about the kids.
I just want every kid to know that they're valued and someone respected them and loved them.
All right, let's hang out there for a second. I'm going to go off cuff here because you are so right, and I love that you said that. How do you, in your classroom, show that love and kindness, right? How do you let your students know that you value them?
I mean, it's my goal every day, just to get to truly know who they are, get to know their heart, not who their family is or their siblings. I've had kids in class that I had no clue I had their sibling before. And then finally one of them was like, you know who my sister is, right? And I was like, oh, well, yeah, now I do because you look alike. Like, didn't put that in your last name's the same. Duh, hello. But I try to get to know them for who they are. We do a lot of team building games. And I just try to rotate kids and like wherever they sit, because they do get their little group, I figure out why do they connect? Why did those 4 kids sit together? Was it because they were just the only seat? Was it because they all like art or they all have history together? What made that group sit together? In the data dig we do where we write down like different kids, modifications, all of that. And it says, some fact about that kid. I try to find that out on every single one of my kids. What are they connect? Are they in HOSA? Are they in FCCLA? What is it? What do they like? Are they the manager of the basketball team? Are they football? You know, like what makes them happy? I had one student, she would just draw. And I asked for, I was like, that is really cool. I hung her picture up on my wall for 2 years until she graduated. And then I put another picture up. But anyways, I still have the picture. But that just made her heart happy. It was like refrigerator, mom putting her picture up. And just, it takes time. And sometimes you have to throw the worksheet out or the lesson out, lecture out, and just have an authentic conversation. And even in the grand scheme of things, no one's going to ask them, what did you do September 6th in class? No one cares. No one's asked me my GPA from high school since I graduated.
Amen.
Nobody cares. But what they care about is how teachers made them feel. And that, to me, matters more than any test, any curriculum, I hope I don't get fired.
So no, obviously you might actually get a pay increase. Or if I was in charge of finance, I would try to find my way. And I mean this, I really do. So I'm going to go there for just a second because I feel like in education, and I did not, my dream was to become an NBA physician, right? I wanted to be a doctor. I knew I couldn't play in the NBA, but I still wanted to be in the NBA in some capacity. And I loved medicine. I took health science. I was in HOSA when I was in high school. And I wanted to follow that track of going into the NBA. Well, that fell short when I realized that you got to go to school for 13 more years and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, no, I'm not going to do that, but I still want to be in healthcare. So I didn't go the track of learning how to be a teacher. I went through alternative certification to become a teacher. And it always strikes me that teachers are not taught. There is no class. There's no chapter. There's no textbook that's called relationships, right? Yes. It's your content. It's classroom management. It's teaching styles, pedagogy. It's all that kind of stuff, right? But nowhere along the way is there a focus on developing relationships. So teachers like you and other teachers that I've interviewed so far, and I would like to throw myself in the mix because I prioritize relationships in the classroom. Where does that come from? Well, that comes from our heart. That comes from our innate abilities as human beings to realize that I've got a human being in my classroom that I need to reach. How am I going to reach them? I'm going to try this. Sometimes it's right. Sometimes it's wrong. But you might spend an entire year getting to know that kid so that you can fill in that checkbox. What makes that kid tick, right? So for me, going back to what we were just talking about, and it's really not a question, it's more rhetorical, but how is it that teachers are not rewarded for the relationships when they build in the classroom? We are critiqued and criticized and marked with a pen on our observations with, did we have the objective on the board? Did we circulate around the room? And those are all great and fantastic things, but what does that accomplish if we don't hold relationships with kids? And where is that validated in that system? So I think I really do. I sincerely mean it when you say that. That is such the answer that I would love to hear from all teachers, and you said it perfectly. So thank you for sharing that. All right, so let's talk about, in your educational career, who is a teacher that you will always remember? Like what about them was so special?
Miss Sadler.
Okay.
She was my content mastery. So I'm very dyslexic. I'm severely dyslexic. And growing up with those challenges and learning how to overcome them, she never let me have the excuse as I'm dyslexic. Like, I don't understand. She was like, no, figure it out. Like, she's also the one that told me I was going to Angelo State and I was going to do something with my life. And I really think she had the biggest impact on relationships, because I had a fellow classmate pass away, and from my old high school. Like, she didn't even have to. I found out that morning. One of my teachers said I looked sad, and she came in and sat down with me in the library and said, hey, talk. What's going on? And I was like, young people can't die. Like, that's crazy. Like, she's dead. Like, that's not right. And she just let me express it, and she just showed compassion. And so that will always stick in my mind, that she was busy. And even now I appreciate it 10 times more, because I know what was on her plate.
Mm-hmm.
And she took time out of her day to stop and say, talk. And
I think that's such an important thing, and you said it, like, now what a teacher goes through in the daily tasks, the meetings, the lesson planning, the grading, the communication piece. And I think it's so important that something as simple as time, how long or how short it takes to have an impact, right? I mean, you have those pivotal moments where you just step outside in the hallway and you have a conversation. That conversation, I've had conversations that have lasted 1 to 2 minutes that had almost the same impact with a kid that I actually took an entire period with 2 years ago in the skills lab to have a conversation with her. But it just takes a little bit of your time, right? You have to recognize, I think that's the key word, is you have to recognize that there's a kid in need. But I think sometimes teachers get it wrong. I think teachers sometimes confuse that with drama. Oh, she's just a drama queen. Like, she just wants your attention. Or he's got his head down, like he doesn't care. Why does he not care? Why do you think he doesn't care? Did you bother to go ask him that question? Did you bother to ask that girl why she's coming into your classroom crying? You know what? It might just be as simple as that her boyfriend broke up with her. But you said something like, she was there to listen to you, right? And it doesn't take that long to do that. So Miss Sattler out there, I don't know that she'll ever hear this, but you're amazing.
She does. I've been trying to find her and I can't, but.
You never know. Maybe someday. All right. So the next one's kind of on you. So we talked about a teacher that kind of had an impact on you. Now, if you can share a pivotal moment in your own educational career that you will never forget. Now, obviously, don't mention students' names, but is there a story that you'd like to share, a pivotal moment where someone or something or some situation had some like pivotal, impact in your life as a teacher?
This is going to sound corny, and I'm okay with that. I would say I can't think of one, but I can think of a lot of them. Like certain one, like kids who have competed in FCCLA and have come back and said, thank you, this has changed my life. There was one student I can think of who was mad that I told her that she was going to compete in FCCLA. Like, I told her, you're competing in FCCLA. And she was mad at me. She got grumpy. And so then when she went off to Tarleton in her speech class, after she gave one speech, her speech teacher said, I give one kid a pass and you don't have to come back. You have an A in the class. And so because you were in FCCLA, he asked, how did you get to speak so well and articulate yourself? And she said, well, my teacher made me do FCCLA and I competed for 2 years and that's how. And so he gave her a pass.
So you were in charge of putting that student in that position?
Yeah, I told her she was going to compete.
Why? Why'd you do that?
Because I knew she would kick butt and take names, and she needed to believe in herself. And so I told her, and she would have fun, and she did.
That's awesome. Yeah, so you empowered a student that may have, and I don't know who the student is, that may have felt maybe powerless, but gave that student a voice because you saw something in that student. And that's why I feel like, CTSOs are more than just a CTSO and have a meeting and then put it on your resume. It gives kids the opportunity to maybe even find themselves that, like for me, for HOSA, right? And I feel what you're saying, because that's awesome, because we put kids in situations where we know they're going to thrive, but they never saw it that way. And I think that's part of education. Goes back to that relationship piece, finding what makes that kid tick and then give them an avenue. But ultimately, you know what? That avenue might be the wrong street. Well, then you rewind and you make them go down a different street, but you still have ideas and concepts for these kids. But I think it comes back to because you care about kids, right? Because you didn't have to do that, but that is something that maybe years down the road, she comes back and maybe that was a pivotal moment in her life. So, hey, tell me, what makes a teacher amazing?
Their heart and their love for students and just their compassion. I don't know. Their heart. You have to be a nice person and you have to care.
I love how you take such thought-provoking questions and you simplify the answer, but you're exactly right.
I mean, why make life complicated? I mean, it's already too complicated. Let's keep it simple.
All right. Let's see if maybe you have a longer answer for this one. Do you think that relationships should be at the center of teaching? And if so, how do you keep relationships at the center of teaching in your classroom?
Yes, because why would you teach if you didn't care about relationships? And that's my focus when I walk in. Every class, I say a little prayer and say, Lord, tell me who I need to notice and tell me how I can make them feel special. And Is
there something daily that you do, or is it just more of a, like, for lack of better terms, like a personality about you that you thrive for those situations? Or is there actually something that you do that focuses on relationships?
I mean, no, when I get out of my car every morning, I just say, like, show me who I need to see and tell me what I need to give me God's compassion. Give me your compassion, because I don't know. I guess it's personality. I don't know.
So I've heard some very interesting answers on this. Like one of the things that Miss Langford talked about when I interviewed her, she kind of does like a motivational Monday. She does a TikTok Tuesday. She does like mental health Wednesday. She does like fun Friday. For me, I do daily journals in my class, and the journals they're blank. Sometimes it's an open canvas. They can write whatever they want to. Sometimes it's a prompt or a quote for them to respond to. Sometimes I do music therapy. Or like today, my students watched a motivational video for 4 minutes and then they respond to it, right? But for me, that relationship building piece is something that I do daily that's focused. So that way, when I go back and I read their responses, hopefully they've said something or responded in such a way that makes me connect to them. So when I have a conversation with them or they're struggling in class, I can maybe bring something to the table that lets them know, hey, I know I gave you this assignment. I know that you really don't care about writing 5 sentences for me, but I read your journals. Like I read them and I understand them. And then once they realize that I read every single one of their journals, I think that light bulb goes off in their head and they realize like that their voice is being heard, right? It's not just an assignment. So I always like to try to give whomever might be listening to this podcast ideas and tools that can help them in the classroom. But sometimes, you know what? It's just simple. Care about kids, love kids, and have a purpose when you walk into the door, like you said.
Yeah, and I just tell kids, I have to be here for an hour. I'm going to have fun, if you want to get on my fun train, come on. But you got to be on the train. So if you're not going to have fun, get on the caboose. But in an hour, I'm going to have fun. So if you don't want to have fun, that's fine. I don't care. But I'm going to be here for an hour.
I love it. What a great spirit you have. All right. So this is kind of like the tail end of the podcast here, right? So I want you to think about some times in your life where if you could go back, kind of like that whisper question that I gave you earlier, if you were to go back, and this might take you a little bit to think of the answers, and maybe you start by giving me one example and that leads to your other two answers, but go back in your life, and whether they're academic, whether it's cheerleading, whether it's childhood, adversity, whatever you had to do and overcome in your younger life or now your adult life, that you would go back and high five yourself for. 3 examples of when you would maybe go back in time and high five yourself, and what would it be for?
I would say the first one would be for just finding the positive in my childhood. Give myself a high five for that.
When there was maybe some negativity in your life? Yep.
And then I would definitely give myself a high five for transferring to Texas State and truly learning the coping skills to get over my dyslexia. Give myself 2 high fives for that one, but I'll still think of another one because you probably won't let me count that for 2.
No, I won't.
My third one is just to stay true to who I am. And just, I'm weird and I'm crazy, and yeah, just staying true to who I am.
In a world of normalcy, weird is the outlier, right? That makes you different and that makes you unique. And that's what makes weird people so awesome. So you're awesomely weird, Miss Mahoney. All right. Last question for the day. All right. So like what I always like to do, and this kind of goes back to the relationship piece of students. I like to focus on relationship building as a teacher, which it sounds like that's your primary focus as well. But I think, and the reason why I'm doing this podcast is to bring teachers together, connect teachers outside of the classroom that normally would not do so. I think even in our departments, we know each other, but we don't know each other, right? We can't share stories and know that you went from one school to the next school, right? We don't know that you were a cheerleader, not a dancer, right? We just see a department chair sitting up in the front of our department meetings doing pirouettes and stuff. So,
which I try not to. It just happens.
Hey, I understand. Like, it's like me in the classroom when I'm like doing this like golf swing in my classroom for no reason. Like, I don't have a club in my hand and I'm not swinging at a golf ball. It's just kind of like, it makes me feel good. Right. So I want to bring this into full circle. We talked about what makes you tick in the classroom, what teacher has had an impact in your life, but I want you to thank a teacher here on campus. Any teacher at Steele High School that you would like to thank, and why? Who would that be?
I'd say Miss Matthews.
Okay. So why Miss Matthews?
She's a rock star, dude. She's flipping amazing. No, she is an awesome teacher. She cares about the kids. She challenges her kids. She's all about including everybody, like through student council, her classes. You can just go sit in there and you'll learn something every time you go in.
Well, that's awesome. Well, if Miss Matthews, you are listening to this podcast, shout out to you, but you are amazing. I did have the pleasure of interviewing Miss Matthews, and you'll have to stay tuned to see who she actually thanked. But hey, you know what? I know it was a short time, but I'm really glad that you took some time out of your day, which in this COVID teaching profession at the moment, time is of the essence. And I understand how important time is to you to get things done, as well as myself. But just like sometimes when we have to put our lesson aside to build relationships with students, this is why I'm doing this podcast, because sometimes we need to take time out of our day to get to and have relationships with other teachers. So once again, thank you. I'm sitting down with Miss Mahoney, an amazing teacher who focuses on relationships in the classroom. So Miss Mahoney, thank you for being on this episode of Keeping Up with the Knights.
Thank you.
Awesome. You have a good day and be blessed as always.
You too.
And tell Susie and Buddy I said hello.
I will.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Keeping Up with the Knights. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure you subscribe and click the notification button so you know when the next episode is released, and then share it with your friends and colleagues. If you're so inclined to do so, would you please rate and review this podcast to help me grow our community of listeners? I hope there was something that you heard today that allowed you to connect outside the classroom. Now, more than ever, we need each other as a support system, and we need to continue to make this the best high school in the state of Texas. Thank you, Knight Nation. Now, go be someone's champion today.